What role do you think communication plays in rising on the ladder of success?
A big one.
The next question that I have for you, it is for college-going students or young professionals, young people trying to rise the ladder of success. So I think so far we have established the fact that communication is an important skill. But what I want to ask you is that no matter where you are, you could be in the military or in school, or you could be an entrepreneur starting everything from scratch. What role do you think communication plays in rising on the ladder of success?
A big one. I think that being able to communicate, whether it's explaining an idea that you have or a new product that you want to develop, but being able to either verbally or through writing explain yourself and your ideas is so key in rising up. And then, being someone, so now that I'm in a position where I manage a team, I think being in communication is important. I want to know what my employees feel successful in, where they're struggling, how I can help them. And, I like to reach out to them and ask them that, but sometimes I need them to tell me like, hey, I'm working on this project and I've hit an obstacle and this is what I need. Or I've got this really great idea for our next project. Here's what I'm thinking. And making that initiation and being able to really articulate what it is that they're wanting to do is very, very helpful. And I think if you become known as somebody who initiates conversation or communication and does it in a really logical and thoughtful way, your esteem and integrity wherever you work will rise. And they'll look to you, right? Because, I know Aafreen, I know that she can tell me what's going on. I know that she knows what she's doing. And she's such a good communicator, I can rely on her to be part of the team. And then I think also being somebody who is a good representative, whether you're working for a government agency or a nonprofit or a company, you're going to have to give presentations and you're going to have to speak to the public about what it is you're doing. And being known as somebody who can do that and be a good ambassador is one of those skills that is invaluable because, who are we going to ask to go present at the conference? Who's going to talk to the media? Who is going to talk to our stakeholders or our investors? I need somebody who can be a good representative, right? You want to be that person because then you'll always have a place.
Absolutely, that's very important. Okay, let's talk about this. Since we're already talking about communication and its relation to success, what do you think are certain steps the young people need to take in order to inculcate the skill?
I think practice, right? Practice. I think a lot of people might be afraid to start a conversation or communication. I don't want to send that email to my boss, or I don't want to reach out to this person about that job opening because I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And like we talked about earlier, yes, you're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from them, right? And you're going to do better next time. But you've got to take that first step. So practice. And then as you're practicing, as you're sending emails or writing letters or making phone calls, I like to think about certain key components of communication. So first and foremost, your audience. Who is it that you're trying to talk to? You don't want to sound like a robot, right? You don't want to practice what you're going to say or write so much that it doesn't sound like you, but you do want to organize your thoughts so that it's clear. And then you want to think about, okay, once I give this person or this group the information, I start that communication. What is it that I want them to do with that information? So is it, hi, I'm really interested in this job. I think I can be an asset because I have these skills. And then what? Like you want an interview, right? Or you'd like to apply. How can I do that? Or, hey, I've got this really great idea for a company. Do you want to invest? Here are the products and our goals. Here's how you can, we can partner. It's giving them an action to take. So once I've given you the information, here's your cue of what I'd like you to do back. And then you have to be receptive, right? For that feedback, for them to come back and say, either yes, which is what you hope, or no, but here's why. And then you can kind of re-strategize based on that feedback. So next time I come back to you, I can say, well, to your point, here's what I've done in response. And then you have that, it's like tennis, right? It's back and forth, and you want to be able to position yourself based on that feedback.
Absolutely. Especially a lot of us, being a young person myself, I remember starting off from this point of really being afraid to ask questions specifically, because the thing with young people like me is that we don't want to look, like we don't know anything. We know what we're talking about, but sometimes we just don't know everything, and that is why we want to ask questions, but we're like, I don't know what kind of impression that's gonna, give of me. So I especially like what you said about you are going to make mistakes, but it's better to make mistakes and learn from them than to just lose that opportunity being afraid that you're going to make a mistake.
And I think it's totally fine to say that you might not know everything, right? Now that I'm with wisdom and experience and age, I remember being that way, right? Like, oh, I want to seem like I'm on top of things and I know what I'm doing. But nobody expects a young person to have that same level of experience. It's encouraged to ask questions because that shows that you care and that you're receptive.
Since we're already talking about that, I want to bring to light that there are a lot of myths that people have about communication. A lot of us think that it's just about, saying things and getting our point across. So what do you have to say about those common myths and perceptions that we have?
Yeah, I think thinking of communication as, okay, here's what I want to say and how to say it, and it ends there, is the most common myth, right? You said it yourself, communication is a two-way street. So you've got to think about who you're talking to and what action you want them to take based on what you're saying, and then being receptive to it. I think another myth that I run into, which is very well intentioned, but does sometimes make people come across as not genuine or not serious, is when somebody tries to present themselves in their communication in a way that they're not. So I'll often get emails, sometimes from students or sometimes from people who want to sell me a service, and they're so formal that it doesn't even sound like a person, right? It sounds like a machine typed it, and you're like, certainly this person doesn't use this kind of language in everyday life. Like, it's good to be professional, right, and to be polished, but when you're using big fancy words in place of words that convey real meaning, I feel like, that's not genuine, and I'm suspicious, right, of why you're being so fancy and so formal. I think another myth about communication is that it's instant, right? Sometimes, you can send a message instantly, but it takes time for somebody to process the information that you're giving them. And sometimes you might have to state your point in different ways for it to come across, because everybody has a slightly different communication style. And somebody might be really gifted in a certain area, but they've got to really explain and synthesize and boil down what they're trying to say to someone else who might not have that same perspective or that same level of expertise. So figuring out how to take a complex idea and communicate it to someone else takes a lot of time. It's not like, okay, I sent you that email, why didn't you read that email? Well, I read it, but it didn't make sense to me. Or maybe I need you to say it in a different way so I can understand it.
The reason that we want to communicate with other people, be it in a professional environment or in our personal lives, is because we want to connect with them. So that human touch, no matter what kind of a professional environment you're going into, is very important. So I especially, the highlight for me was saying that it's important. For when you said that it's important to be professional, but it's also important to retain that human touch. I love that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend starting off a business inquiry with hey, what's up? Because you don't want to swing too far the other way, where you're not serious. But yeah, when I want to work with somebody, whether it's a partnership or helping a student out, or conversing with a colleague about a project, I see this as an ongoing process, right? Communication is a journey, and who do you want to take that journey with?
Yeah.
So try to be yourself and show that you've got a personality and that, you're a human and not that you're like really just after something.
Absolutely. Especially like when you're communicating through digital means like an email, I feel like it's all the more important to show that you have a personality, like you said, but at the same time, lean towards the professional side.
And that's such a good point, Aafreen, because I think email too can be tricky. I mean, it's the most efficient way to communicate in a business setting, but I think people sometimes rely too much on email. And with email, the problem is, you may send me an email that has some constructive feedback, and I may read it and I think, oh, well, Aafreen really doesn't like my idea, or, oh, she must be really mad at me. And you didn't mean that at all. You were just being very direct, very frank, and so people can read tone and emotion that isn't there into your email. So sometimes I think, thinking about how you're communicating might be, don't always rely on email, like try other means and think about what it is you're trying to convey and how it'll be best received.
Okay, moving on. I feel like this is a really important question because at the end of the day, communication is just one of the many skills that it's really important for us to imbibe. So I want to know, what do you want to say to parents or educational institutions or college institutions about inculcating communication as a skill in a very formalized way, in a more structured way to young people so that they can take it and move forward in their professional and personal lives and feel more empowered to do better in their lives?
Yeah, well, I think starting with parents, right, because education starts at home, is giving your children an opportunity to speak for themselves, to communicate for themselves. Working for a university, even at an honors college where we see a lot of very skilled, high-achieving students, I often encounter young people who don't know how to communicate. Whether they're coming in person or making a phone call, they can dial the number, they can show up, but then once the communication starts, they kind of freeze up, right? They're intimidated. And that's normal, and that's fine. But I think the more opportunities you can give your young person to have those experiences, the better they're going to get, because you have to practice it. It's an art. And then I think for universities, certainly instructors look at ways of building communication into their courses. You might have to do a presentation or a written paper. But beyond that, something that I love that we do at the Honors College of Georgia State is that we have conferences where students who are conducting research, and it doesn't always have to be in laboratory sciences, it can be in any discipline, have the opportunity to get up and articulate the work that they're doing. And I think today more than ever, it's so important for people who are doing research or innovation or entrepreneurship to be able to talk about, write about what it is they're doing. As we're distancing, we need to have those connections and that communication, that ability to say, here's what I'm working on and here's why it's important to you, makes me pay attention. And I'm like, oh, I totally understand this. I'm invested in this idea now. So giving students the ability to have places to try out their communication techniques and strategies and have that experience so they know what it feels like and they can use it again in their professional lives is so important. So start now, practice. Let your students, let your children have those experiences. Let them make mistakes. You can correct them later and like, oh, it would have been better if maybe you'd said this or not done that. But give them that experience. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. You got to take those training wheels off. Just let them go.
Yeah, no, I love that. And especially how it starts with at home. Everything starts at home. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of what we're doing, we're influenced by our ultimate role models, who happen to be our family members and most importantly our parents.
Goodness, as a parent myself, it does make me more mindful about how I speak and how I write, knowing that my children are watching and modeling what I do. So yeah, parents, you guys are a big role model. And the way that you communicate is going to inform the way that your children enter that realm of communication.
Yes, no, that is beautiful. So, last question that I have for you is what is your message to the young people, to the teenagers, parents, and young adults watching this video?
I think that everything starts with communication. Every good idea has to be explained to partners and groups, and that through those communications we build strong relationships, strong communities, and that, you know, as you go on, no matter what area of academics or career you decide to pursue, make sure that you're always thinking about communication and building that into what you're doing. You know, even if you see yourself working in a lab and you're not in front of the camera, or you're not writing essays, still think about ways that you can talk about what it is you do and why it's important, because everything starts with that.
That's beautiful. I'm sure that anybody who's watched this video will be taking so much from whatever you've had to say about communication, how you express yourself. It's truly inspiring, and it's been such a pleasure to have you. I know you have had a jam-packed schedule recently, and we really appreciate that you took out the time and you came to this platform to contribute in the lives of young people. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a fun conversation. I would rather do this than anything else on my list today. So thank you so much.
Oh, that's good to know.